Hello and welcome to a special preview of the Euro 2020 quarterfinals. In this mini episode, we'll be discussing England versus Ukraine, who they take on Saturday, the late kickoff at 8 p.m. UK time.
We've divided these previews into three key areas for each team. What to expect from these teams tactically, the players that we think will be the game changers, and how we see the two sides interacting on the pitch. Let's get right into what we expect tactics-wise from this game.
Oh, well, it's definitely going to be an interesting tactical battle. I think what I just worry about is that the minute England are favourites, I just fear that that's our tournament over. Because that, in my mind, is like the indication that we've gotten too big for our britches.
It would be very, very classic England to beat Germany and then lose to Ukraine.
Well, I just feel like the reason why I say that is because I think that this Ukraine side presents quite a significant threat to England. And I think that if we don't shift our tactics for this game, then we might well struggle.
I absolutely agree, and I think that... Well, let's look at Ukraine first, because I want to say what I think England should do, but I want to sort of preempt that by talking about Ukraine. Ukraine have been a really interesting side in terms of how they've approached a lot of games. They have also liked when teams have sat back against them. They've used individual quality to win a lot of their games, with your players like Yarmolenko and Yaremchuk, who have come in literally good and every now and again will break up in games. This was the case against Sweden, certainly, when Sweden looked very well organised. Ukraine couldn't break through except for little moments of individual quality. Against Austria, they couldn't really find a way to make it work. And against the Netherlands, it was a really interesting case study of how Ukraine work, because when Netherlands were on the front foot and really bombarding them, Ukraine looked really, really vulnerable. But as soon as the Netherlands sort of sat back at 2-0 up and sort of started to play a bit more comfortably, Ukraine sort of found their way in. And so I think that England, despite the fact that they've played in a very conservative fashion so far this tournament, very sort of safe, two defensive midfielders, should really think about reconsidering the entire approach to this game, because I think that sitting back and allowing Ukraine to sort of keep having chances until the ball falls in just the right way for Yarmolenko is how you lose this game, whereas bombarding them is not only a good way to rotate and rest some players for the potential semi-final, but also, I think, the most effective way tactically to approach a game against this Ukraine side.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think the other part of Ukraine's game is that, they're very happy to, allow a lot of the play to happen in the middle and to use their extra man in the midfield, because they often play with three men in midfield to try and break up that play. So I think that England are going to need to use the width of the pitch in the same way that they did against Germany and that we talked about their need to do. So I guess I slightly worry that Southgate might not see them as much of a threat, might decide to switch back to a four at the back, and at that point I think we're starting to play into their hands.
I think the midfield choice is going to be really important, because I wouldn't mind so much a four at the back. What I would like to see, just for a number of reasons, is just rotating the lineup. We have four players that are all on yellow cards. That's Maguire, Foden, Rice and Phillips. And if they get booked here, then if we did win the game, they would miss the semis. The yellow card rule for the Euros is weirdly harsh. If you get a yellow card, like Phil Foden got booked in the first game against Croatia, if you get a yellow card at any point and you get a second one like 4 games later, you miss the next game. But fortunately, following the conclusion of this game, if you get like a second yellow card in the semis, it doesn't count. So you won't. The only way you miss the final is sort of getting sent off. So there is that. But all of these players, you just wouldn't want to go into a semi-final against either, Denmark or the Czech Republic, missing a key player like a Maguire or a Calvin Phillips, because it would just hurt your chances. So I would look at players like that and go, you know what, for resting reasons and to sort of minimise risk, I wouldn't be that upset if they came out of the 11. I also think maybe someone like Harry Kane could be given a rest. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin could stretch his legs, to sort of audition and see if he can do better than Harry Kane's done so far, and also just to give Harry Kane a bit of a break. And just generally, other attacking players as well. Jadon Sancho obviously would be a great one to run out here. More of an attacking player, would put Ukraine more on the back foot. I don't think we need to be, and I don't mean this in the sense of like, oh, Ukraine are bad so we can do whatever we want. I mean this in the sense of like, I don't think we need to be cautious, because I think that's how Ukraine win this game. I think being aggressive is how we win.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main thing in my mind, how I've kind of thought about it, is that I don't think we need to be really quick on the attack. I think we can afford to build up a little slower. So, for example, I would be very happy I wouldn't mind if Bukayo Saka didn't make the lineup, and I'd be happy if someone like Jack Grealish started instead, because he is a little bit more creative, as a playmaker rather than dribbling and running through the lines, which are both things that he can do as well. But he's got a little bit more than Saka does in terms of cutting inside and finding a cute ball here and there. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I was kind of looking at this, and I don't want, definitely, both of Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice to start. I think one of them should come out, probably for Mason Mount. I think that his energy in midfield, if we want to play a flat two, will be really important. So in my mind, I'd probably want England to play a 3-4-3, because definitely Ukraine look a lot weaker, a lot more fragile in their 3-5-2 system, which has worked really well for them since they started it in the group stages and turned around their tournament. I think that by overloading the wings, that's how we're going to create the most chances.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think overloading the wings could be a good way. I think the back three did work very well against Germany. But I also think just playing like a flat midfield three, if we played a 4-3-3, for example, with two midfielders that are going to be industrial, like creative midfielders, you could have, for example, maybe like Mount and Grealish, and you could anchor it with Rice. I just think having two defensive midfielders, firstly, is just really, really dull to watch. And secondly, you could then have a situation where England win, but both of those players have been booked. So you're going into the next round and you don't have a defensive midfielder at your disposal, which would be an actual nightmare scenario. I do think that sort of bringing on more creative players in the midfield could make a flat three really work. England's possessions have been really, really uncreative so far. Only 36% of England's possessions have reached the attacking third this tournament. That's 16th best of all the teams in the tournament, of the 24 teams. And I think that the other thing that'd be great would be trying out new attacking players, because when we do have possession of the final third, we're bad at converting into shots. Only 23% of our attacking possessions result in an attempt on goal. We've all seen and sort of yelled at the TV when we sort of have the ball in the final third and you go, right, the cross is on, and it's a pass back to the right back, or it's a pass back to sort of central midfield, or even sometimes to the keeper. I think it'll be interesting this game for England as well, because Ukraine have been away for all of their matches so far, so this is just par for the course. Obviously, the game takes place at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome, but for England, this will be the first game this tournament, and whatever happens in this game, the last game that they play this tournament, that'll be outside Wembley. So that could make a huge difference. Obviously, the players have all spoken about how much it means to play in front of fans, especially at the Germany game with sort of 40,000 fans, I think it was there, to have that sort of whipped away, and you'll still have fans there, but it won't be English fans, or for the most part it won't be, will probably have a big effect.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point to bring up, that just those little things that can, bump you out of a groove that you've had, which I wouldn't say England are in a groove at the moment. I don't think they're really, flying and firing off on all cylinders, but anything that can disrupt them is worth mentioning. But let's move into the individuals that can have the biggest impact over these 90 minutes and maybe 120. Who have you gone for Ukraine?
For Ukraine, I've gone for Ruslan Malinovsky. He has had a really, really good tournament. I think he had a little bit of an injury, so didn't play in the most recent game, but has got the most chances created of any player in that Ukraine side. He's created 1.9 chances per 90 in open play, which is a really good thing when you think about how good players like Yaremchuk have been, and the chances they can get in the air and on the ground as well. I think that he is going to be, as we talk about sort of Ukraine waiting for those small chances, it's going to be one of sort of Yarmolenko curling in some sort of wonder goal, but I do expect us to sort of lock him down. I could see Malinovsky being the player that sort of almost flies a little bit under the radar, and as a result is actually the more dangerous of the two. I think he's just a very, very talented player, really good with the ball, really tricky, has a whole different number of ways that he can approach the final third with the ball. And maybe will be a little bit underestimated, because when people talk about Ukraine stars, he's sort of like the fourth or fifth name that comes up, and I think he's should be the second.
After Yarmolenko or after Zinchenko kind of thing?
I think he should be above Zinchenko in the pecking order, in my opinion. I think Zinchenko was obviously very, very good against Sweden, and is a good player, but I think Malinovsky is really dangerous.
Interesting. Definitely a great player, and someone that's going to potentially be someone that they have to watch out for. I mean, I think he came on off the bench against Sweden, so again, to be able to inject that kind of quality from the bench is going to be really dangerous, because that means that you've got to try and tactically move things around in order to compensate for the new threat that they'd bring. So yeah, I think so that's a great great choice there. I actually have gone for Alexander Zinchenko. It's probably, again, I feel like I'm choosing the mainstream boring options. I think my England choice is probably getting a little bit boring as well, but I just think that Zinchenko is just too important to ignore in terms of like Ukraine going forward, creating chances. He probably has the freest role of any Ukraine player. He plays kind of at left back, left wing back, but then can kind of drift into midfield at times as well. And I think that he's just going to be key for them, chance creation wise. And I just think he's the real one that I guess it's tricky because I'm an England fan. I'm almost thinking of this as like who am I most afraid of, and I feel like Zinchenko is going to be the most important player to close down, the most important player to kind of try and squeeze out the game and keep him on the fringes of, because if allowed time and space, he will hurt you.
Yeah, I think what you said there about him sort of having the freest role, I think is the best way to say it. Obviously, he has played predominantly at Man City as a left back, but his preferred role is a midfielder. We've seen him play as a left wing back and sort of on the left side of a midfield 5, as it were. We've also seen him play on the left side of a midfield 3 as a number 8, and we've seen him sort of advance roles in some games to almost look a bit like a 10. So he is definitely another player that will have a very fluid role, and this sort of makes him a little bit more difficult to keep a finger on. I do think that, yeah, counter to what we were saying about and I still do think we shouldn't start 2 defensive midfielders, but I think Ukraine's midfield is definitely something to watch out for. I do think that in this game, England will be helped out by the fact that Ukraine are dealing with a lot of injuries. A lot of players were sort of getting kicked around in that Sweden game, and I think they have 4 or 5 players up to 5 players that could be missing this game, which is sort of another argument for me maybe doing a bit of rotation.
Yeah, well, I think Yarmolenko might even is a kind of a 50-50 at the moment. So yeah,
I feel like he's so key though that even
if he's a little limping, he's going to start.
Yeah, anything short of his legs being off of his body, he'll play.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think I was looking up kind of the strengths and weaknesses of a 3-5-2 system, and definitely one of the strengths of a 3-5-2 is that it's a really fun position to play as a midfielder, because regardless of where you start up, where you set up, you're going to get chances. So you're right to highlight their midfield as a potential source of concern for England, and something that they're really going to have to watch out for, because to have kind of 2 or 3 potentially late arriving midfielders into the box from the centre can be a real threat.
Could be a real threat indeed. For England, who's your game changer?
Well, surprise, surprise, I've gone for Mason Mount.
Okay.
I just think that he should definitely start this game. I think that England missed his energy in the midfield last game. I think he'll be fresh. And I think that as we talk about this kind of midfield battle, regardless of how England choose to set up, if they go for a 4-3-3, I'd love to have, as you mentioned, Jack Grealish in the midfield as well. But that also puts a lot of pressure on Mason Mount to be kind of the channel between defence and attack. And also, if you go for what I would like, which is maybe a 3-4-3 again, I'd want him in that flat 2 alongside someone like Declan Rice. And again, that puts a lot of pressure on him to, A, be really resolute defensively, but B, be progressive with his passing, keep spreading it wide, and also, be a threat on the edge of the box. So I think that regardless of how England set up, if we're going to combat Ukraine's style, and if we're actually going to give them the respect that I think they deserve, then Mason Mount's going to have a pretty good game.
Yeah, I agree with that. The player I've gone for is slightly different, and this is a player I assume will be starting just because I think he has, I would argue quietly, some people might have sort of been praising him all competition, but I think this player has quietly had a really, really good tournament and sort of silently been like England's 3rd best player.
Jadon Sancho?
Jadon Sancho, yeah, his cheerleading on the bench.
Really, I think silent.
Exactly. No, I think, well, that's the other funny thing. It's like, now that we know that Jadon Sancho is signed for Manchester United, confirmed starting this game, he conforms to Gareth Southgate's big club bias.
I mean, or, Southgate was just helping him keep the price down.
Southgate, the United fan, was like, Ed Woodward was like, listen, man, we can get him for cheap. If he starts scoring in the group stages, we'll have to pay way more for him.
To be fair, where's the lie? I can see it happening. I'm willing to believe the conspiracy theories if it does.
I have gone for a United player though, but not Jadon Sancho. I've gone for Luke Shaw. I think Luke Shaw is going to be really, really key in this game, if indeed he does play, and I think he probably will still keep Ben Chilwell out, even if we do a bit of rotation. I don't see that being a huge area of concern. And I just think Ukraine defensively have been a lot weaker down their right side. I can see Luke Shaw having the opportunity to come up a lot of the time and sort of make those passes that he's been doing, sort of whether it's crosses or along the ground, and that causing like a real sort of cat amongst the pigeons scenario. I think he's been so good this tournament. He's obviously just come on loads this season in general. And his chance creation has been really good this season. I think he is our highest chance creator per 90 this tournament, which is just one of those things that kind of flies under the radar a little bit, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you agree, and you've sort of also been watching him approvingly and going, but it feels like he's one of the names that doesn't really come up in conversation. And I think he could be, in a situation where I think there are going to be a lot of rotations, I think he's going to be maybe sort of like one of the mainstays that sticks in the game and takes advantage of one of Ukraine's weaknesses.
Yeah, I think he's quite a good reader of the game, and I think often, unless you're paying attention or unless it gets highlighted on Match of the Day or whatever, it's easy to miss those players because they're not making unbelievable last-ditch challenges. So for Luke Shaw, because he also is quite good going forwards, if he's not among the goals and assists, it's easy to kind of forget about him or take him for granted. But he has been quietly having a very good tournament, you're right. And I think that not only is Ukraine not the strongest defensively on the right-hand side, they also, in a lot of games, have pushed more attacks through the right-hand side than they have their left. I think against Austria, for example, I think 45% of their attacking movement was down the right. And those numbers are backed up in other games as well. Against Sweden, it was 42% again. So yeah, I think he's going to have a key role both defensively in keeping that right side quiet, but also going forwards in trying to capitalise on a little bit of their defensive weakness.
Well, yeah, that's exactly how I see it going, because obviously Yarmolenko plays on the right for them, so they try and funnel a lot of the attacks down that side. So I think it's a really, really good opportunity for sort of like Yarmolenko he's been playing more as sort of a striker in Ukraine's last couple of games, so he's going to be hanging really high up in that right half space, and the right-sided fullback, whether they're playing as a wing-back or a right-back, is going to really have to come forward and overextend a little bit, and I could just see Luke Shaw sort of nicking the ball off someone, and that's starting so many good attacks.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it. I mean, I do think that England with a three at the back, a five at the back, will be a little stronger in terms of those half spaces, as you said, where someone like Yarmolenko would like to sit, because if he is kind of trying to operate in between that full back and the centre back, then that's going to hamper our ability to create from wide. But I think honestly, I'm actually quite excited about this game. Obviously, it's an England game, so you're going to be excited, but I actually think it's going to be quite a fun matchup to watch. And again, it's one of those things where like England can either decide to turn up or not, but hopefully it's going to be an interesting tactical battle.
You approach it, yeah, and I think it's kind of hard to look at the interaction because we don't really know how either side, like there could be wholesale changes on either side, obviously because Ukraine have quite a few injuries. England might also be sort of reacting to that and sort of changing back from a back three because there's not as much of an issue if you're not having to face down Robin Gosens and Joshua Kimmich, so you might sort of revert to what makes it more comfortable. But yeah, no, the feeling about England, it's definitely got to that point, as it always does with England in tournaments, where they sort of like, I'm always a little bit uneasy the first few games and I haven't put my trust behind them. And after that Germany game, I'm like having to rein myself in because in my heart, in my soul, I'm like, England are winning the whole thing and then the World Cup. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that every time I start to think that is exactly when we lose. Yeah,
slow down, pal. I also think you've got some pretty bad luck in terms of your predictions and what you want to happen. The exact opposite happening. So if you could just, I don't know, pray for a Ukraine win, that would be probably quite good for us.
What I will say to sort of leave you with this and leave the listeners with this is that this is the first time that Ukraine have been in the Euros quarter-final game since Euro 2006. And they were knocked out then. And the last team, incidentally, to beat Ukraine in a Euros quarter-final game went on to win the whole tournament, that being Italy. Could history repeat itself? I don't know.
There's only one way to find out. Just closing out, I guess my final question to you would be, who's your front three for England in this game?
I would really like to, I'm leaving Foden out. just because as much as I would like to get him back in the 11...
For the yellow card, or...
Yeah, just the yellow card is just too risky for me. You want to have him as an option for all of the games, so no point bringing him on a yellow carding him. I would obviously have Jadon Sancho on the right. I think enough is enough. Let's play him now. Obviously, he now plays for a Premier League club, Gareth, so that should tick your box. And on the left... Yeah, it depends what we play with. If we play with sort of a midfield two, I'd be happy with Mount in the midfield two and Grealish on the left wing. But I'd really like to also see those two in a midfield three with like a sort of 8, sort of 10 type of role. So failing that, if we were playing Grealish, if we're playing sort of like a 4-3-3, maybe Saka again. I just think Saka's been good. He's got a lot of energy. I don't think he'll be playing on the left wing when we're sort of trying to... in the further games. So yeah, I think he's young, he's got a lot of energy. So yeah, I'll be happy with that. Saka, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Jadon Sancho.
Interesting. I definitely agree with Sancho, and it's quite a salivating prospect to have Grealish and Mount in midfield, but I do think Grealish has to start, and I wouldn't mind him starting on the left. And then, I know I've come down quite hard on Harry Kane this tournament so far, but I wouldn't mind him starting in this game. I don't think it's going to be as important against a low block. For him to not always be on the last defender. So I would be fine with him dropping a little deeper to be creative and us building up more slowly, and then him hopefully scoring another goal.
It's all down to mentality, isn't it? Because it's like, depending on the player, and obviously we don't know Harry Kane, and players always want to play, but which is going to send a more effective message just after he's scored? Is it to go, right, you've scored, kick on, try and fill your boots in this match and keep going? Or is it to go, right, Harry, you did score, but you have been utterly drossed. We're going to rest you, so hopefully you can sit on your own, have a little think about what you're doing wrong. You can watch Dominic Calvert-Lewin, sort of, he'll show you that it's not safe, and you know what, he might score a brace, and if he does, then that's on you for giving him the chance to get in the squad. So I don't know, not knowing Harry Kane personally, which would be the more effective motivator, but you could see it going either way.
You just want to put Harry Kane on the naughty step.
A little bit.
Think about what you've done, Harry.
Well, think about what you haven't done.
Well, that too. All hearts, all minds will be turned towards Saturday night's game. It's definitely going to be one for the books, regardless of what happens. I think England fans can be rightfully confident and excited about this game, and I personally can't wait.
Definitely one to look forward to, and probably a good place to leave it off. Rupert, great to talk to you as always.
Cam, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone at home for listening. Come on,
cheers,
you
guys.
England.
Come on, you England, indeed. Cheers, guys. Bye.